Welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women with me, Joanne Bibby. I hope this is a place where you'll find encouragement, inspiration and community to live life well, body, mind and soul. So hi and welcome to episode 6 of the Live Life Well podcast for busy women. Just a place where we recognise that life is busy and crazy and wonderful. And as women, we have a lot of demands on us in our lives, doing the things that we love, looking after the people that we love, and just doing all those day-to-day jobs. But that, and amongst all of that, we can do life well, and that we are important enough to look after and take care of ourselves and to feel great. And as we sort of come in to do the end of our first sort of mini series of 6 podcasts, as someone who loves food and is really passionate about eating well to feel well, I am so excited to have our guest tonight. Claire Thomas is a good friend of mine and who's also just qualified as a registered nutritional therapist, and she's launched her new business, Nourished to Soar, just I think in the last month or two. So Claire, I'm so delighted to have you on and talk about all things food and all things healthy eating and how that affects us. So could you just tell us a little bit about you and your journey to where you are now, just newly qualified and starting this new business? Over to you.
Thank you, Jo. No, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. So, yeah, I'm Claire. I live in Devon with my cat and chickens and my husband. And yeah, as Jo just said, I've just launched as a registered nutritional therapist, which is very exciting. But I guess I should take you back a few years to how I ended up to this point of, retraining effectively. So at 18, I actually developed glandular fever and that was pretty tough. But I think when you suffer with ill health, sometimes you put everything in isolation and just go, I had that. And then I had lots of digestive issues, and I went off to university to study children's nursing. So I'm a children's nurse by background, and had lots of issues, health issues digestively, but they sort of sorted themselves out. I stopped eating wheat for a while, and they sort of sorted themselves out. It was fine. And then I moved up to Edinburgh and swine flu hit, the COVID cousin, really, I guess, if you want to call it that. And they believe I got swine flu. And I had this cyclic 18 months of not sure what's wrong, constantly going back to the GP. I was okay, then I wasn't. I was okay, then I wasn't. And then all of a sudden, I just crashed. And that's where the chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis came about. So then I was sort of in this place of being told that recovery wasn't possible. And this is something that I still hear even now. We're looking at 10 years later since I received my diagnosis, people are still being told that recovery isn't possible, which is really sad considering how far we've come with certain things. But for me, I was told that. I was told I would have to leave my job as a intensive care nurse, which I loved. And I was sort of kind of finding my way a bit when somebody gave me a book by a guy called Jordan Rubin called The Great Physicians, and it was all about chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And this is where I was introduced to the idea of body, mind, and spirit when it comes to healing. And and it was sort of reading this book was like, I really felt that recovery is possible, that it's not just about, living with this condition for the rest of my life, but actually I can see a way out the other side. So this took me on, I think my eyes were open to nutrition. Like, I wouldn't say, well, it depends on where your starting point is, but I never felt like I was unhealthy. I very much grew up on home cooked food. We had a veg patch, chickens, that kind of thing, for much of my early age. So I was very used to home cooking, but you go away, you sort of go to uni, you do these things, and diets change. That's quite normal. You get busy. But I changed my diet, and and then it was almost like this kind of process of changing my diet and changing my mindset. I did something called the lightning process, which is a NLP kind of based in NLP or neuro linguistics programming. So it's based in that. And everything was like this layering of, I do one thing, figure out something else, do something else. And then in about 2018, I was at New Wine, which is a Christian conference, and I really felt God just say, you're healed now. You don't need to be afraid of fatigue. You're healed from chronic fatigue. And that like had a real impact on my mentality of like how I viewed kind of my health and well-being, really. And it took a while to kind of get used to that. And I still have periods of fatigue. That's quite normal, and everyone still has periods of fatigue. But it was very much, I knew at that point, okay, that's it. That part of my health journey, I'm recovered from that part. And I mean, there's always things that you can uncover and see, but that part was sort of, I'm recovered, and that's amazing, and I'm so thankful for that. So at that point, I'd moved back to Devon, and I was working as a children's community nurse, and kind of there was a reshuffle in the organization I was working for, and I just suddenly was like, I'm not happy where I am right now. Opportunity came for me to leave the NHS, and I'd been kind of toying with the idea of studying nutrition because I'd seen the power in how changing my diet had impacted my health. It was like I'd been carrying this desire to sort of help others living with fatigue to feel well as well. It kind of been this desire. And I really felt like it was a now or never moment at the time. It was like, I really feel I need to leave the NHS. I need to do it now. And I need to go back to university and retrain as a nutritional therapist. So I did that. So I left a stable job. And then 6 months later, COVID hit. So I think, as a nurse, if I was still in the NHS, I would have not left. I would have, helped, because that's what you do. You stay where you are. And obviously COVID was such a big thing that I would have stayed in the NHS. So it very much felt like that was the time. So that was 3 years ago. So I've just spent the last 3 years studying a postgraduate diploma in personalized nutrition. I've also done a personalized nutrition practice diploma, and that all comes together to mean that right now I am a registered nutritional therapist. And my specialism is supporting individuals living with fatigue, because that is my desire. My desire is for people living with, there's different levels of fatigue, but for those living with severe fatigue, like chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, fibromyalgia, I want people to know recovery is possible. And yes, it could take a while, because it is a step-by-step process, but at some point it is possible. And that's kind of what has brought me, I guess, to this moment, and to why I've launched Nourished to Soar. And actually, my tagline is nourishing body, mind, and spirit, because I believe that they're all intertwined. And it's not just about body, but it's about mindset, and when I talk about spirit, for me as a Christian, it's my faith, but for other people it could mean something else. But I think they're all intertwined and connected, and it's how you support the body as a whole, really, the holistic self, as they say. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I just love your story, and I love your message that recovery is possible. And I hope people listening to this that are struggling with their health just know that there is hope, and that there are simple things you can do, maybe not to completely solve the problem, but to feel a lot better. And I hope that you hear that tonight, and that you're encouraged by that. And I really love that your journey, you did incorporate all the parts of yourself. And in this podcast, we are all about looking after ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, because they're so connected, aren't they? We're going to be talking tonight about eating well and how food nourishes us. But like you said, it's not just about that. It's about looking after ourselves mentally and spiritually, and how you've worked on your mindset through your coaching, your NLP. You've looked after your spiritual side, and how you experienced healing through your faith, which is just amazing. And that's all part of your journey to get to where you are, to feeling well and healthy, which is just fantastic. I'd love to get into more about the sort of fatigue side and the mindset side of things, because I think there are things that affect a lot of us. But
Yes.
before we do that, yeah, you'll know that for sure. Before we get into those things, I'd love to just ask you something that I ask all my guests, and
Mhm.
to hear what living life well looks like for you.
Okay. So for me, it's living life how I want to live life. It's being able to have the energy to do things that I want to do, to feel well, because sometimes, when you feel sluggish and heavy, that can also impact your energy levels. And I think it's just recognizing and accepting that I'm me and that's enough. And I get to live life how I want to. So that's where, I think it all combines with the mindset and the nourishment of the body, because yeah, it's all in that acceptance and just living life how you want to.
Fantastic. And that is so important. I think your energy does affect everything. And
Mm.
I've not really shared much of my journey in the podcast so far. I'll probably do like a little bonus episode about it. But I found it's so much about how food does impact energy. And I'm really excited for you to share what you got to share tonight, because I think it's a massive thing for all of us. Like, our energy is finite, isn't it? And it's precious. And we have to be careful about how we choose to use it. But also, there's things we can do, really simple things to boost it and to feel our best, like naturally. And I think you mentioned acceptance as well. I think that is such a massive key to us living well, is accepting where we're at, acknowledging there's maybe things we want to work on and improve and change, but also accepting ourselves and where we are. That's the start, isn't it? It's the starting point. You can't progress without accepting where you're going, where
Mhm.
you're at, sorry. So yeah, I think that's massive. So great. So yeah, just thinking about your journey with fatigue, then I guess you had quite an extreme um, experience of it, having been diagnosed with chronic fatigue. But I think it's something, like you say, all of us will experience
Yeah,
some days
sure,
at some
sure.
point in our life, especially
Yeah.
as we get a little bit older. We realize we don't have as much energy as we used to. Life is demanding, takes a lot out of us. So I'd love to just hear. I mean, you've mentioned some of the things you've done, you're working on like your mindset and looking after your spiritual side, but as a qualified nutritionist, are there things that we can be doing on a daily basis that will help us protect and boost our energy?
Oh, of course. And I love that idea of food be thy medicine, and it is so true. I love like what food can actually do for us when we're eating, and it's about eating whole, real food. I'm sure other people have talked about this. It's moving away from ultra processed foods wherever possible. I know it's so easy to just grab things from the supermarket, pop them in the microwave, and away you go, because sometimes we're just time poor. But it is thinking about, I have a phrase of, what would your future self thank you for? And it's thinking about, I do appreciate that when you're busy, that a lot of people I meet, it's the cooking from scratch, or the cooking fresh vegetables, or eating fruit, whole grains. It kind of goes out the window because you're just grabbing what's quick. However, we've got to recognize what some of these foods are doing to our bodies. And that's the thing. So if we just look at something simple like blood sugar regulation, that's probably, one of the places to start. I mean, there's multiple places that you can look at, like gut health, for example. That's also another thing. But if I just take blood sugar regulation as a simple example, so when we eat lots of kind of carbohydrates, so we get glucose from carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are found in all sorts: vegetables, fruit, whole grains, as well as, what you think: bread, pasta, donuts, that kind of thing. But when we eat a lot of starchy carbohydrates, that break down, the body is able to break down quite quickly. What happens is that it raises our blood sugar levels. And then the body goes, okay, I need to get rid of this glucose, need to push it into the cells. So we get insulin released. And then sometimes if we have something that's broken down too quickly, we get too much insulin. So then that pushes our blood sugars too low. And then that's where you feel lethargic. You get those slumps perhaps in the afternoon. You don't feel quite well. And then you find yourself reaching for the sugary food because our body needs glucose, or sorry, our brain needs glucose. Mostly it's uses, I was listening to something about 25% of our glucose is needed by our brain. And so we need to be eating, so sorry, when we have low blood sugar, our brain is going, I need to eat, I need to eat. And so we eat sugary foods to kind of boost. And then we get that, oh yeah, I'm feeling great. And then you just get this kind of roller coaster effect where you feel knackered, you feel fatigued, you feel icky. So you eat sugar and you sort of feel okay for a little bit longer. But one simple thing that we can do is sort of balance what we're eating. So it's making sure that when we eat, we're eating protein, fats. Now, I know everyone's like, oh, we can't have fat. Actually, fat is needed in our bodies. Now, I'm talking about healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, salmon, if you eat, fish. It's those sort of healthy fats, nuts, that's the sort of things that they're not bad for our bodies. Our bodies actually need them. And then we have good protein, and often it's about, good quality protein. So whether that's your animal meats, dairy, whether that's beans, legumes, whatever it is, you're getting your protein source. And then your carbohydrates. Now, ideally, we're looking at sort of more, filling your plates with lots more vegetables. You could have carrots, butternut squash, or if you do have your whole grains, so your brown rice, your brown pasta, your quinoa, those sorts of things. And what happens when we have these things together on the plate, because they all break down at different speeds in the body, you're not quite getting the ups and downs, the roller coasters, and you get a bit more of a balanced blood sugar. So you don't quite get the energy slumps. Now, that's just one thing that we can look at. I mean, ideally look at things like gut health. If you're not eating enough fiber, how often are you going to the toilet? Okay, I'm a nurse, so I like talking about the toilet.
Yeah.
How often are you doing that? Are you clearing we have toxins in our body through what we put on our skin, through what we inhale, through what we eat, through just our hormones in our body. When once the body's used them, they become kind of byproducts, they become toxic waste. Now, I don't say that to scare you, it's a normal procedure, and we need to get rid of that. So, are you eating enough fiber? Are you eating enough diversity? So are you eating enough, like, eat the rainbow, different colors, fruits and vegetables? So it's easy to add, I love frozen veg and fruit, because sometimes if you're busy, you might, you buy some vegetables and perhaps they end up in the bottom of the fridge, kind of going a bit moldy, which isn't great. But frozen, you can just grab what you need out the freezer, steam them. They don't, steaming holds more of the nutrients. And then you can just, whatever meal you're having, perhaps you could have a pile of broccoli or green beans, something quite simple. It's quite easy to add that to a recipe, because we need nutrients. And so it's like, where are you getting your nutrients from? And often the thing with ultra processed foods, they're often high in calories but not so high in nutrients. And that's what we want. We want foods that are going to nourish our body, that are going to give us the minerals, the vitamins that we need for basically energy production. When you look at kind of what our body needs, it's quite interesting, and it's how we're getting that into ourselves. So yeah, and then I probably could go on, but
Oh my goodness, we could talk about all of this all night, and I feel like tonight we'll probably only scratch the surface because there's so much we could talk about, and we'll definitely have you back there. Like, we could do a whole podcast on each of these things you mentioned, couldn't we? Like blood sugar, gut health, for
Well, yes,
sure.
you've even got the liver. Like, don't forget the liver, especially, are we making sure our liver's working properly? Like, giving it the the greens, the fluids, hydration, protein is needed for detoxification. So when I say detoxification, I don't mean go on a detox. I just mean, is your liver doing what it needs to get rid of the toxins as well out of your body? So yeah, it all kind of comes together.
Yeah, so we're just supporting our bodies to do what they're meant to do. We're just not getting in their way, basically, aren't we, with all the rubbish that we're putting in. So I think some of the things you said there are really simple, but they're just really important. And sometimes it's about not overcomplicating, isn't it? So about balancing your blood sugar and getting your balance of protein, healthy fats, and healthy carbs. Like carbs are not an enemy either. We need them for
No,
energy, need
no,
them for our
yeah,
brains, but choosing
yeah,
like the good ones. And I've found for sure if I do that, if I focus on nourishing myself well and getting that balance right, then your energy kind of takes care of yourself. Your weight kind of takes care of itself. It's like you do your bit and your body does what it's got to do. Just get out of the
yeah.
way, basically, with the rubbish. And yeah, gut health, a whole other thing we could talk about for hours, and something that
Oh,
I'm super passionate about. It's this
so
vast
much
space, isn't
about
it?
gut
It
health.
affects everything about your health, doesn't it?
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
so I'm putting you on the spot here, but could you, because I love really practical examples and
sure,
advice,
sure.
so could you just give us a couple of examples of meals that had that balance? I'm a big fan of healthy fats, but sometimes I struggle to get lots of protein in my diet because I don't eat
Sure.
lots of meat. So could you just give us a couple of some of the meals you'd have on a daily basis that have that balance in them?
Sure. So, I guess depends if you're a meat eater or not. So for tea, I've had salmon, with a portion of green veg, the green leafy veg, so broccoli, kale, um, green beans. I put some carrots, and then I had some sweet potato. Um, you know, I've gotten really into buckwheat, Sorry, it's very hard to say. It's too many beets. Beetroot, buckwheat crepes. Now they do take a bit of time to
Ooh.
make, granted, but in that, like I've had hummus with pomegranate seeds, some lemon juice, some like green salad leaves. So that's been quite, an avocado in there, of course. So that's good because I've got some protein and some fats, and then obviously I've got some carbohydrates in the vegetables and the buckwheat. Because I eat gluten free, so I don't always go for, obviously. I try not to eat too many gluten free alternatives because they're highly processed, and so it's trying to, like, I'm not, again, not demonizing them, but it's moderation and balance, isn't it? It's that 80-20 rule,
Yes.
80% of the time, and then 20% of the time, if you don't quite eat what is normal for you, then your body can cope.
Yeah.
Um, what else? What else? Gosh. What else do I love? Like, I guess, poached eggs with avocado on a whole grain toast. Overnight oats are quite good. They're quite practical if you're busy because you can make them up with dairy-free milk, or milk if you drink dairy. With flax, you can put your flax seeds in. So your flax seeds good for fiber. You can top with berries, maybe some bit of yogurt, whatever kind of yogurt that you like. Those sorts of things, they're really good. And you can put some nuts and seeds in as well. So that you've got that balance, you've got a bit of protein and healthy fats with the nuts and seeds, and flaxseed gives you the fiber, and you've got a bit of oats there as well. Protein, you can put protein powder. Protein powder is useful, but obviously always use a quality source for your protein powder.
Brilliant. So just some really simple ideas. I guess it's thinking of something that you fancy and then thinking how you can add those other elements in. So if you fancy some salmon, thinking how can I get some healthy carbs and healthy fats in as well. So just building that meal, and like healthy food can be fast food, it doesn't take long to grill a bit
No.
of salmon and boil some broccoli, does it? And you mentioned habits, and that's something I'd love to talk
Mm.
about a bit more, because I think feeling like every day starting from scratch, I've got to cook well and eat healthily. But for me, the biggest thing that's helped me is to get into habit of doing that. Like understanding a bit of why, like we're talking about tonight, about the science behind why eating well is important, but more so getting into a habit of doing it. Like you're saying, 80% of the time, being in the habit of eating well, of cooking well, maybe planning ahead, doing some meal prep, that kind of thing. And you mentioned something about your future self, and I had this quote in my head for tonight for talking to you. I'm going to read it to you, and I think it was meant to be. So it says, staying committed to healthy daily habits is like writing a series of love letters to your future self. And I love that because you're doing something really kind to your future self, because the better we look after ourselves, the longer, healthier, happier life we're going to live. My main goal in life is, well, not one of them, is to be able to run around after my grandkids. And I know to be able to do that, I'm going to have to look after myself now. I can't
Yes.
wait until then to start looking after myself. So it's like you're investing, like you said, in your future self. So do you have any tips? And I guess this sort of goes into the sort of mindset side of things, which we'll maybe talk about more as well, but um, about making it more of a habit, so something you're not really having to think about. And how long does that take, and how can we do that so that it feels like less of an effort to be doing these things that are good for ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's having intention. I think
Mm.
you've got to be intentional about it. You know, Dr. Caroline Leaf, who I'm a massive fan of, as I know you are, Joe.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing her actually. Were you there at one of the conferences? Yeah,
Yeah, it was
we
great.
saw her, and that was fab. But she talks about it takes 63 days. So I think she does talk about like periods of 21 days, you know, that, but it's not just 21 days. You've got to build on it and build on it until it becomes kind of inbuilt, and you kind of do it now without thinking. And actually, if you don't do it, then it feels weird. So I would always say it is being intentional. So for me, I plan a lot. You know, for Sunday nights, I plan my week. Okay, what does my week look like? Because I, you know, manage a couple of businesses at the moment, because I'm still doing, you know, running my first aid business as well. I have to be very intentional. You know, things like my morning routine is really valuable to me, because if I don't get my morning routine in, I find that I'm off center for the day. So for me, my morning routine very much looks like I'll do some stretching. I will do some meditating on the Bible. I will do a bit of journaling. I'll go out and feed my chickens because I get some sunlight. So that's really important to get some sunlight. And that for me is really valuable. So I make sure I'm like, okay, when I'm planning my day, I go, well, I need X amount of time, and that's protected. You know, I have to protect that time. So I almost have to be like, right, so I'm gonna get up. So say like this morning I had to actually leave the house at 7:15. So I knew that I needed to get up at about kind of 6:10 so I could still get my routine in, and, you know, do everything I need to do before I left the house to go to work this morning. And so then you work backwards and you go, okay, well, if I'm doing that, then I know I need to go to bed at X amount of time so I can get my sleep, because for me, I need sleep. You know, but sleep is also really beneficial. So I think the biggest thing is almost like we've already talked, it's about thinking, okay, what would my future self thank me for? And also having forgiveness on yourself if you kind of don't get up or you don't do it one day and go, because I think if we start beating ourselves up, we get into that shame cycle. And if we get into a shame cycle, actually, we're more likely to not carry on. We're more likely to just go, oh, yeah, well, it's just how it always is. I never end up doing it. You know, I always fail. It's like, again, this links back to mindset, because we're in that shame cycle, you know, a bit of Brené Brown, love a bit of Brené Brown. We're beating ourselves up, so we don't do it. So it is just resetting and going, do you know what? I didn't quite get it right today, but tomorrow I'm going to do it. And then it's getting up and then going, okay, I said that I'm going to stretch, so I'm going to stretch. And sometimes if you feel like, so what I've talked about, if I just talk about my morning routine, if that all feels too much, just go, do you know what? This week, all I'm going to do, because it's important we focus on one thing at a time. If we focus on too much, we get overwhelmed and we're less likely to succeed. So perhaps for the first week, do you know what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to stretch. Or I don't have the phone in my room because I know that if I have my mobile in my room, I will scroll before bed and that disrupts my sleep. So it's actually I leave it outside. So could you do that? Could you just say, do you know what, for this week, I'm going to leave my phone outside the room or downstairs or wherever you want to keep it, so that I know that when I get into bed, that's my time to wind down. And then I'm going to get up and I'm going to stretch. And then next week, okay, well, I stretched all week last week, brilliant. Or maybe I managed 4 out of 5 days, whatever, however you want to do this. So this week, okay, so I'm going to stretch and then I'm going to add, I don't know, a walk, a 10-minute walk around the block. I guess it depends what your schedule allows, really. It's having flexibility on that. So I would say it's stepping stones.
Mm.
It's like building blocks, basically. Don't try and do everything at once. I think in more practical terms, don't do everything at once. Break it down and just visualize. So, it's a real thing in NLP where we look at visualizing, what would I look like once I reach this goal? What will I hear myself saying? What will I see myself doing? What will I feel? And if you can visualize yourself doing it, and then what you need to do is break it down, come backwards, break it down into actually what is manageable today. So as long as each and every day you have something that's manageable, it builds. So once one thing's ingrained, you can add another thing, then you can add another thing. And then before you know it, you're at a place where you're like, oh yeah,
I'm
I
doing
feel
it.
weird if I don't do it. So, I went on holiday a couple of weeks ago and I was still, perhaps not quite in the same way. I couldn't feed my chickens, but, I still stretched. I still had time for prayer and meditation. And, I still did those things that were important to me. Like I looked at what I was eating, so that I, could feel my best.
Yeah. And it's just important to know that we deserve to feel our best. I think we forget that sometimes as busy women, that we're so busy looking after other people, we forget what we deserve. We deserve to feel well. We deserve to take time to look after ourselves. And I know I'm feeling it in the summer holidays with my girls off. I've let my daily walk slip, which I realize is so important to my mental health. And now I'm like, my brain's like going to explode. So it's prioritizing those things that help us feel well, isn't it? And you might think, oh, I've not got time to cook healthy food, but actually we've all got 24 hours in a day, and it's about making that time, isn't it? And realizing that is important to be able to prepare food that's going to nourish your body and help you feel well. And I totally agree with what you're saying, is that if you do that for long enough, if you just try and eat well and balance your blood sugar and eat lots of veg and good protein and healthy fats, you'll start feeling so well that you won't want to go back to your old
Yeah.
habits, won't you? You'll get hooked on that feeling. You'll be like, oh, this is how I'm meant to feel. Okay, I don't want to feel like I used to feel. And you'll still have that odd treat. You'll still have that piece of cake or glass of wine, and that is fine. But you'll want to mostly eat that way to feel your best, because we deserve to. And I love a couple of things you said there about stacking your habits. So starting with one thing. What's the one thing you think could make the most difference now? Maybe that's a bit of a challenge for you if you're listening to this today. What's the one thing you can take away from what Claire said to put into place for like 30 days, 60 days? And once that's a habit, then stack another one on top of that. Like you're saying, don't try and do it all at once. Do it in an achievable way, but you'll feel so proud of yourself. You'll be like, right, what's next? But I also love what you said about just having grace for yourself. Like there'll always be days where we grab a chocolate bar or get a takeaway, and that's okay, because life is busy and sometimes we don't have time. And it's absolutely fine. And if that's what you need in that moment, then just acknowledge and accept that and enjoy it and start again the next day. So I just love so much of what you've said, and I've got so many questions I'd have loved to ask, but we're running out of time. But we'll definitely have you back, Claire. I'd have loved to ask you more about mindset and emotions as women. I think
Yeah,
especially we can
yeah,
find it challenging to make healthy choices because of our hormones and whatever's going on
sure.
else in our life.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have you back to dig into that. But I've got a couple of quick questions before we wrap up. So just because we're on the topic of energy and fatigue,
Mhm.
could you just maybe tell us like 5 things to avoid? We've talked about what to sort of focus on and what to eat and how to do that. But are there anything that really zaps our energy that we should avoid, either
Yeah,
foods or lifestyle wise?
sure. So the first thing that comes to mind is stress. Stress
Mm,
actually, it's amazing when you look at what stress does to our bodies. So yeah, avoid that. You want to get good sleep, so avoid blue screens for about, 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Lots of sugary foods. So
mm,
lots of, your meal deals or, your cakes, chocolates in moderation, not a problem. But we're talking about if that's, eating sugary cereal for breakfast, having
mm.
that sort of meal deal for lunch, um, having a chippy tea, that sort of stuff, or, takeaway, that actually it all adds up. So avoiding that where possible. But again, it's that moderation. Um, oh gosh, five.
Doesn't have to be fine.
I'm like trying to think. I mean, um, yeah, it's hard to focus on what not to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's better to have a positive focus, isn't it? But I think it's good to know some things to avoid. And even things like stress, like you can't avoid that, but it's like doing things to help combat it, isn't it? Those
Yeah,
self-care
yeah,
things that'll help
yeah.
balance that out. So
Balance
taking
it
your
out.
your
Yeah.
time in the morning to have your routine, get out for a walk, those kinds of things.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, just thinking what can avoid that sugar crash as well, balancing it out. If you're gonna have a chocolate bar, have it with a meal so you get your fats and your proteins too. So that's all really good. Oh, that's been amazing, Claire. Honestly, I could talk for hours about all of this. You know, I could. We have done in the past, and we will do again. So where can we find you if anyone's listening and they'd love to chat to
Oh,
you more? I know you've put together an amazing 12-week program all about nutrition and mindset. So if people want any to find out more or just to
sure.
follow you, where do we find you?
So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Nourish to Soar. Also, my website is nourishtosoar.co.uk. Yes, my programs are based on 12 weeks because I believe that, if you just come to me for a one-off, you don't get the support, the encouragement, and you don't see progress in the same way. And I think especially when you've got fatigue, living with fatigue, you don't want to do too much at once because you get overwhelmed. And actually, that can cause fatigue as well, overwhelmed because it's stress. And so it's about walking together through that. Um, and yeah, and I offer a free sort of 20-minute review, so health and energy review before we work together, just to make sure that, I can support you and meet you where you're at, really. And I'm the right person to do that.
Amazing. Like, why would you not want to talk to you, Claire? Awesome. So, just for fun to wrap up, please tell us if it was your last meal on earth, what would you
Nice.
pick? And we won't judge you if it's not healthy because it's your last meal. It doesn't really matter, right?
It doesn't really matter. I will admit, and I am a chip fiend. It is a running joke, but I'm learning to manage that. That's okay.
It's your
I will
weakness.
admit, I love chips. So it would be really nice, triple cooked chips
Mm,
with a really good, steak, but that's been like quality steak, grass fed, reared ethically, and then just a really good green salad.
oh,
I love a salad.
can't
That's
help
probably
yourself.
not.
Just love a salad.
I'm not a massive sweet person. So when it comes to puddings, I don't know. I don't know if it was my last meal on earth. Probably would eat a pudding to be fair, but
Might as well.
I have no idea what I would eat because I'm not. Oh, that I know what I'd have. I'd have a cheese board.
Okay, nice. Nice alternative to this dessert. Yes, I like
I love,
it. I like
I
it.
love
Yeah.
the cheese board. So
Right.
yeah.
That sounds good. I don't eat much meat, but if I'm going to eat meat, I do like a good steak, especially if I think the cow's had a happy life. So
Yeah,
that sounds
yeah,
pretty good.
definitely.
Oh, Claire, it's been amazing to chat to you. And I just know that everyone listening will feel inspired. And I don't think they'll feel overwhelmed. I think you've really helped us break it down and just given us really simple takeaways that we can put into practice without feeling like we don't know where to start. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I just hope if you're listening, you do feel inspired that you're worthy of taking care of and nourishing yourself so you can soar and go out and do all the amazing things that you are called to do. So thank you, Claire, and thank you everyone for listening. We will be back soon. Take care. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you've had some inspiration to look after yourself, body, mind, and soul, and feel as well as you deserve to do. Please remember to subscribe and share this podcast if it's been helpful for you. And I'll see you again soon with another episode and some more amazing guests. Take care.